It's Lori, and for today's Sunday video, I wanted to work on this still life flower image with you, and we want to light paint our flowers. So let's jump in and get started. We are just going to use tools here in Lightroom. So you'll notice my backdrop, I need obviously a new one. I don't know if water got on it or what's happened, but we're gonna fix that, no worries. So to get started with any image, you first want to look at any cleanup as well as your histogram. So I already did some basics on this image. I did open up the whites just a little bit, and then I am going to look at my temperature and tint, and I'm going to bring it down just a little bit to give it more of that blue. I think it makes the flowers look more of the actual color that they are. Okay, so next I do want to address the background and some cleanup. So just really quick, I'm going to come in and clean up this spot because it is distracting. So let's go ahead and just get rid of that one and that one at the bottom. Luckily, I think that was all. These were actually flowers from my garden in November here in the US, and I just couldn't believe that I was still getting roses. So let's clean up this line really quick and easy. Okay, so next let's go ahead and go to our mask, and I'm going to select the background. Let's see how good it does. We're just doing some basic cleanup before we start our light painting. Okay, so let's look and see. Oh, it did a very nice job. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take the shadows and darken, and I think the easiest way is to come down to our tone curve, and let's just darken that background. All right, let's get it down pretty dark. I want a little tone in it, so that's not too bad. Let's come down and bring our blacks just a little bit. Okay, so now it looks like I just need to clean up a couple spots. I can always do this after I show you light painting, but let's just get these key distractions kind of out of the way super fast. One more right there. Now you can decide on your backdrops when you have a black backdrop. I don't shoot with black backdrops very often, so you may want more detail in your mask. You may not want it that dark, so we could bring it up so it's has a little more texture to it. You can decide. All right, we're going to get rid of that AI thing, and let's go back to our main menu. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do is I really want to create this more like a artistic still life, and so I want to light paint my flowers a little bit. So the easiest way to do that is going to be to again use a mask, and what I want to do is create a new mask. Now you can use your brush, but I prefer to use objects, and I like to use the square because it's going to select it for us. So the first thing I want to do is let's come down and select this bottom flower, and we'll let it detect it. And then I'm going to give this flower some definition and some detail. So I'm going to bring down the highlights. It's a little bit bright, but I'm also going to give it a little of the whites. Now the color, I want to make it a little bit more buttery because it was, and I'm going to give it just a little bit, or actually take the clarity to the left to make it a little soft. So I want this to look kind of like a still life painting. So to do that, you want to remove some of the texture. You can actually reduce clarity. It works great. And then for the tone curve, let's go to the middle of the tone curve. Just take, I'm not sure. Let's go to the shadows in it. Yeah, just lower that tone curve just a little bit right there. Okay, so let's see before and after. It's already looking much, much better. Okay, let's go up and create a new mask. Objects. And I think for this rose, I want to actually darken it a little bit. So I'm going to make that selection and just check it. It did a good job. And instead of doing just your exposure, what I want to do is bring the shadows. There are shadows in that rose. And again, I like to use my tone curve. So let's just come down, yeah, and bring that down a little bit. Not too far, but just a little. I'm going to kind of darken it. And then I am going to saturate the sky. Give it a little bit more golden hue. And we could also reduce any highlights Yeah, so let's see again before and after. And we can turn off our mask. That may help you guys see. There it is, bright. And now we've kind of brought it down. So what we're going to do is kind of craft our story the way we want it to be. All right, so let's now move to these leaves need some attention. So for that, we can still try our object mask. Come in and apply that. Object mask is my favorite. If you watch my videos, you probably know that, but I just think it works fantastic. Now for this one, I am just going to drag the exposure. I just want to darken that really fast and get that taken care of. That leaf is not important to our story. Now, as I'm working through the image, I'm going to grab a brush and I'm just going to brush a little in the center because it's not as detailed as the flowers. And we're up here on mask 5. And now again, I'm just going to lower the exposure in those middle areas. Anywhere where I see a little bit of brightness, this leaf out here needs to really just kind of fade away. And the stem to that guy and that guy. So we're just kind of working with our leaves now. And I'm going to bring down the exposure on our container. You're just kind of moving it around and crafting where you want the bright parts and where you want the darker parts. And let's make this smaller, and I'm going to darken this stem a little bit more. I think this is so fun just to kind of come in and be a painter and modify the story. All right, so let's see this before. There's all the brightness of the green, which is not important to your roses. It almost distracts. So there we go now with it kind of coming away a little bit and being less of a distraction. Okay, let's add our next mask. And I think I want to work on this center rose, but I definitely think I'm going to use the brush. And this is where we're going to do a little bit more specific light painting. So the center is already pretty bright. I'm going to come around and brush on these outside petals. And I'm just going to go around this edge a little bit. There we go. Now let's go ahead and show the overlay so you guys can see it at home. I'm going to come in here and brush a little bit more. Now you can see I have my flow and density all the way up. You could even lower your density on something like this, and as well as your flow if you wanted to. So now what we're going to do is come down. Let me turn off the overlay. And I want to darken these edges a little bit. So first I'm going to try the shadows because that probably will do it. We can also again use our tone curve. Just a little adjustment. Reduce the highlights in that area. That's kind of giving it a gray look. We don't want to make it gray. So you have to be really careful when you're doing this. Let's just use our exposure slider. Just a tiny bit is what I'm looking for. Now, what I notice is it needs to blend with the rest of the rose. So what I'm going to do now with my mask is bring down that density and my flow. And I just want to softly go around the rest of this center part of the rose. I'm going to darken these other petals a little bit more. And what's great about brushes is you can go over things multiple times. Now in this center part, remember I brushed it. So if we look at our overlay, you can see it, but it's very light. So it's not like the rest because I changed the flow and density. So let's turn that off. And now what I'm going to do is come in and reduce. Let's see if we want to reduce the whites just a little bit. Yeah. Now, for this guy, you can decide if you would want to give it more texture or less clarity. So I'm going to try less clarity. Actually, we probably need to make sure, yeah, we're on the full mask. Or you could increase the clarity. And I think since it's in the center, I'm actually going to increase the clarity on that. So this image was not focus stacked or anything like that. So everything's not completely sharp, and that's okay. So let's look at mask 6 before. There you go. You can see kind of bright. And now after, yeah, it's giving it more of that old world look. I still may even bring this down a little bit more, but let's just move on to the next one. So as we go around our image, I do want to bring some moodiness to this rose over here. So let's grab our objects, come around, and we're just going to select that one. And what you can also do when you are using this technique is we can come down now and we can bring down the shadows, because this guy has some shadows. We can still pop the whites, which are going to be kind of those bright areas. So it's almost like dodging and painting. And let's see if there's any, yeah, there's some darks in there. So just modify the dark side because it's got dark shadows in it, but then we're keeping the bright parts bright. All right, I think that turned out really nice. Let's look at it before and after. Yeah, I really like the difference there. Okay, so as I look at the image, I'm really liking everything so far, but we've got to address these top two roses. And I've kind of been saving them for last. So let's go up to this guy and make sure we've got our mask. Let's click on this. Oh, it can't find the object. There it goes. Okay, so now for this one, I think we're going to do the same technique. Let's go ahead and bring down the highlights because it was really bright. Since we're creating more of a moody still life, I am going to pop the whites just a little bit, but bring down the shadows and bring down the blacks a little bit. There we go. That's getting it in line with the story, but we still have some little pops. Very interesting. Let's see what it does to lower the, yeah, I don't think we want to lower the exposure. I just wanted to give those shadows a little bit more depth. Even maybe play with the tone curve. And again, you could add some clarity or texture. It kind of depends on what you're looking for in your still life images. I do think for this one, some clarity probably helps it. And I love kind of the antique look that we're getting as we make these modifications. Right, so that's before and that's after. Now, always once you do it, if you want to increase or decrease the amount of your mask, you can come in and do that. So if you've made your changes and you're like, oh, it's just a little too much, just come slide that slider down. All right, and I do think in this one, I want to make sure we don't have too much gray. It may be in the blacks. So let's keep those shadows down. Yeah, that's probably got it. All right, so let's go ahead now and work on this last rose, and then we can give this image some final adjustments. Final tweaks are fun. You get to kind of just take your brush and play. So we've got this rose selected. And it keeps giving me this warning. There we go, hover on it. That's pretty good. I think it'll work for what we're trying to do. All right, so we're gonna come down again, and for this one, we definitely need to bring down the highlights. There we go. Now the light reflects pretty across the board. Do wanna bring it down on this guy a little bit, but I think that works really nice. And for this one, let's go ahead and see what happens if we lower the shadows. Yeah, but open up the whites just a little bit so you can see it's got that shadow area is darker, but our bright areas are still a little bit popped with the whites. Whites is, I think it's one of the most underused tools, and it makes a really big impact in your edits. Okay, and for this guy, let's see what it does. I think we want to make him a little softer. I think I like him softer because it kind of resembles that one. So I'm going to leave it like that. So let's do this last one. It's going to be really easy. What I'm going to do, grab a mask. I'm actually going to use the brush, and I just want to brush on these outside petal, and I'm going to come around to this petal and maybe the edge here, and then we're going to come down to our settings. And let's just lower the highlights, darken those shadows. Make sure we got it. Oh, guys, remember on my brush, I had lowered my flow and density. So let's increase those and come back around. That's why we weren't seeing anything. Always check your brushes. If I change it, I sometimes forget to go back. Now we can see we've made a drastic difference. So I don't want the shadows that dark. Okay, so we've got our highlights down, which definitely helped. And I think for this, I'm just gonna try lowering the exposure a little bit. Ooh, too much. You gotta be careful. This one is tricky. And we wanna make sure, yeah, we get in close to the flower. I don't wanna make it black, but I definitely wanted to darken it a little bit. So when you're working with flowers, it can be really challenging. So bringing down the highlights worked. Let's try the middle of the tone curve. And yeah, that's gonna make it too. So we're just gonna do a tiny bump. And I think we need to come around this edge. Make sure that we're just getting all those parts. And again, let's go ahead and open up the whites. Let's take our shadows. That's not bad. Just kind of going around and painting with this guy. Kind of give it some overall. Let's try the exposure again. Yeah, it's just a tiny bit. That is negative 0.24. And again, let's look at it before and after. I just want it to blend with the rest of the image. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go back to the main menu and I'm just gonna kind of look at everything and see what's working, what's not, what I like. Do I need to make any color modifications? I do think I want to bring up the red tones a little bit. There we go. Maybe desaturate the orange. Just gonna kind of give it just a little pop. Now, one last technique that you can do, I am going to work on my background, but you can also do a matte finish to this. So let me show you how to do that really fast. You can raise your blacks, lower your whites, and that's just going to give the overall view a kind of matte look. I'm not sure I like it with this image. You can always do it on your background only if you wanted to, but I think I like it like this. My final steps, you guys, would be to crop this image. I'm just going to do a standard, kind of come in and put it in the center. And then I think for our background, you could add a texture if you wanted to take it into Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and let's create another mask on the background. I do think that it needs a temperature adjustment. So yeah, I think I need to get rid of any warm tones in it, but I don't want it all the way blue. Maybe a little blue. And I'm just going to bring down, yeah, that tone curve. I like there's some shadowing in it. Now I don't want that on this area of the mask. So let's check our mask. I think it does have, yeah. So for the mask, let's go to that mask and we're going to do subtract, and I'm going to do an object. I want to subtract my vase because we do not need that in this mask. It considered it the background, and let's hover over that. Very nice. So that's better. All right, I see a couple little spots. I'm just going to work on those. And I hope that the next time you do any type of, really any image, play around with painting your light and really bringing in the shadows where you want them, the brightness where you want them, to create an overall final image. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take a minute to click like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.